Alright guys, Revolve Rustler here, and today I'm not going to be reviewing Money in the Bank 2019, is how I should start this. I didn't watch the pay-per-view last night, I heard it was I'm not going to be reviewing that show. I had a very long weekend, I was very tired yesterday, I wasn't feeling fantastic, so I didn't stay up to watch the show. I also have an assignment to finish off today, but I thought I'd do this video first. This is going to be my Game of Thrones Season 8, Episode 6, the Iron Throne review. This is the finale to Game of Thrones, and I got up this morning, and it was like the first thing I thought of. Like, I need to watch the finale. So I got up, I watched the finale of Game of Thrones, and it is so weird to me that this show... I haven't watched this show since it started. I watched this show around Season 5. That's in truth be told, not gonna lie, and it's just weird to me, and it's shocking that I can't look forward to this anymore. Like as critical as I have been of this season in particular in these videos, Game of Thrones is it's a cultural phenomenon. It's arguably one of the most important television shows of the 21st century. It probably is the most popular. As far as quality, if you'd said to me what was the best TV show of the 21st century, The Sopranos, True Detective, shows like that, and Game of Thrones is in that sort of ballpark. Obviously, there's peaks and valleys for Game of Thrones, but when it's unbelievably unbelievable, it's one of the best shows you'll ever watch. And there's specific episodes within Game of Thrones, like the Battle of the Bastards, like the Reigns of Castamere, that are some of the best episodes you'll ever watch in television. It's shocking to me, and it's almost saddening to me, and I got quite emotional when this episode finished, and I'll talk about the content of this episode in a second, but when this episode finished, realising I can't look forward to this anymore. They may be doing some sort of spin-off with a certain character that I'll touch upon in a bit, but it's just I am happy with the way this series concluded. I think it was, considering what happened last week and the outpour and the outcry from fans last week, there was a lot of people really angry with the show last week and what the directors and the producers had chose to do. Is that Martin's vision? Is that George R. R. Martin's vision? I don't know. I would have thought that someone like Martin, who obviously wrote the first 5 or 6 books, would have chosen the tragedy of last week's episode to be as tragic as it was. But at the same time, I don't know, I'm not in George R. R. Martin's head. This episode this week was emotional, and I've seen a lot of people, I've already seen a bunch of reviews. This is why I thought I'd get mine out there already. I've seen a lot of people be rather critical of this finale as an anti-climax. And to me, in all honesty, I'm not going to say this over-delivered. I'm just going to say this was pretty much kind of what I'd wanted, or what I am happy with this ending, is I think where I'd go. As far as the casualty list goes, there's only one, but it's a pretty big one, and after last week, you could kind of see that one coming in this episode. But that's fine. Sometimes the best storytelling is the most obvious. And so, in discussing the actual episode, we shall start from the beginning. At the beginning of the episode, there is this fantastic 10 minutes where there's no sound, no music, and it is just Tyrion Lannister walking through King's Landing, seeing all the corpses, seeing all the charred remains, and eventually he decides to go to the Undercroft of the Red Keep, and he there discovers under some rubble the bodies of both Jaime Lannister and Cersei. So they are dead. It was a really, for me, that was a touching moment, because it was at the end of the day, that is Tyrion's brother and his sister. And it also solidified that they would be dead. Like, I knew that there was no real way they could escape last week's, ceiling collapsing on them, but there's always the chance if you don't see a character's death, they're probably not dead. And I've said this all the way since season 5 when Stannis Baratheon died, and I thought he'd return, but he never had. So I think with Jaime and Cersei, I did want to see the bodies, just in all honesty, just to confirm it, and we did, and it was a very touching moment for Tyrion. You could see the anger that he had at that point for Daenerys. Not just had she destroyed the innocent lives of all these people in King's Landing, all these innocent civilians, but she'd taken away his favourite person, the person he loves the most, his brother, and of course his sister, who he's had a very tumultuous relationship, but it's still his sister, and he tried to save her even at the last second, and of course he wasn't able to. So it was a really touching moment for Tyrion to see the bodies. Really sad, but really well acted. And I think as far as acting in this series goes, Peter Dinklage has been superb in whatever dramatic piece he's been given. I think season 4 for him was a real standout season because of the trial, escaping, confronting Tywin, killing Shay. Big season for him. And I think season 5 and season 6 and season 7, he hasn't had that much stuff to do, except be Daenerys' hand. But in this season, with specific conversations with Varys, with Daenerys, with Jon Snow in this episode, which we will get to, and with this moment here, I think that he has been the standout, really, of this season. And Peter Dinklage has been George R. R. Martin's favourite character. Peter Dinklage. Tyrion Lannister has been George R. R. Martin's favourite character, so it's no surprise to see him get such a powerful moment in the final episode of Game of Thrones. After Tyrion sees the bodies, we cut to Jon Snow and Sir Davos walking through the streets of King's Landing, and they encounter Grey Worm, who has got Lannister soldiers who obviously are unarmed on their knees and is going to execute them all. And Jon's like, why are you doing this? Like, they're beaten. And Grey Worm's like, they're not beaten until they're dead. And I'm like, no, Grey Worm turned villain. Grey Worm is a true villain. He's almost like Commander Cody in Star Wars. I made the reference to Revenge of the Sith last week. He's like the general to Palpatine. It's like Daenerys says, execute Order 66, and Grey Worm's like, yes, my lord. Grey Worm, Jon pulls Grey Worm's hand back, and then all the Unsullied turn their spears on Jon, and then Jon's just lets them go, and Grey Worm just executes, slits the throats of these Lannister soldiers, walks off with Sir Davos, and then you've got Daenerys's speech that she gives to all of her Unsullied, all of her Dothraki, and there's a really fantastic shot here, which is Daenerys she gets off the Drogon, the dragon, and she, as she's walking forward, you can see the dragon's wings in the background, and it is almost the imagery of the devil and the imagery of Satan, a villain, is absolutely incredible. That is one of the best shots they have ever done in this series. It was when I saw it, I've seen people comment on it, but when I saw it, I was like, that is incredible cinematography, incredible direction. And there's a couple of more elements in this episode, specifically, of really great direction that I'll touch upon in a bit. You've got Daenerys giving a speech to the Unsullied and Dothraki. She tells Grey Worm, you can be the general of all of my armies. She tells the Dothraki and the Unsullied, essentially, we are the breaker of the wheel, or we break the wheel, or something like that. And it's when I was watching this speech, it reminded me of the Adolf Hitler speeches that you see on film reels and stuff like that. It was all about, you've fought against oppression and we've won. And it was just, honestly, the parallels to these dictators, these tyrants, Satan, all that imagery were really impressive from a writing standpoint. It's simple to do, but you made her a villain. You now need to just run with it, and they did, luckily. So Daenerys finishes her speech. Tyrion walks up to her. He takes off his lapel, the Targaryen sigil lapel, throws it down the stairs, and Daenerys says, "You're a traitor. You committed treason." She says, "You committed treason by freeing your brother," and then Tyrion says, "Yes, and you burned an entire city to the ground." Just the writing of the actual script for this episode was probably the best script they've done for an episode this season. It was really, really well written, really witty towards the end of the episode, which we'll touch upon soon, but really emotional here. Tyrion's dialogue in this episode was top notch. Daenerys's was good as well, but it was Tyrion's really that was top notch stuff. You had Varys. Oh, I'm not Varys. I don't know where Varys came from. Daenerys tells the two unsullied guards to take Tyrion away, and they lock him up in a room. Jon Snow basically goes and confronts Tyrion, goes and sees him, and this was maybe my favourite part of the episode. Jon Snow and Tyrion discussing what to do next. Jon's just like, "You're a traitor, like, there's nothing I can do to save you," and Tyrion's like, "You know what, Jon, like, you've always been the man of good, the man who does the right thing no matter what, no matter who it hurts." And he says this, and Jon's like, "No," and Tyrion's like, "No, like, you, at the end of the day, this woman's, she's not who we thought she was. We've made mistakes." He says, I sacrificed my best friend for this woman, Varys, obviously, in the last episode, who he snitched on. "I sacrificed my best friend for this woman, and look how she's repaid me, essentially." And Jon's like, I can't kill her. I can't do that." And Tyrion's like, "I know you love her, but sometimes duty is preventing love," or something like that, I think, and there's a reference to the Aemon Targaryen thing that he said back at Castle Black to Jon Snow. Just really touching scene, and at the end of this little scene, Jon Snow, Tyrion says, "There's the right thing you should do," and Jon Snow says, "I'm not going to do it," and he leaves Tyrion in the room to dwell on his thoughts. Jon then goes to the Iron Throne room, or what's left of it, and he sees the Iron Throne, and Daenerys is there, and they're talking, and Daenerys says, "Will you, like, do you still love me?" All this sort of stuff. And Jon says, "You are my queen, you will always be my queen," and they embrace and they kiss. And just as they embrace and kiss, Jon, like, wriggles, and I was like, is either wriggling because he's into it, or he's going to gut her. You hear the stab, and Jon Snow impales Daenerys with a dagger. He lays her down on the floor. She dies, and just as she's dying, you can hear Drogon roaring. Again, really good direction, really good idea, really good editing, to be honest. To have that in the background. Drogon flies in to the Iron Throne room, and he sees the dead body of Daenerys. He hits it with his nose to try and move her. She's clearly dead. And enraged, Drogon, instead of burning Jon Snow, Drogon burns down the throne room. He burns the Iron Throne to a crisp. At start, it's like the Iron Throne can take the heat, but Drogon, as he gets angrier that his mother has died, he destroys the Iron Throne. Again, as far as, like, a shot composition or, like, editing go, or an idea of something to show Drogon's pain and suffering, one of the best things they could have done. He burnt the throne that killed his mum. Like, it's perfect symbolism, perfect metaphor, perfect imagery. Really, really good. One of my favourite parts of the episode as well was Drogon showing his suffering. And that kind of ends the first half of the episode. Now, all that stuff probably happened in like 30, 40 minutes. But halfway through the episode, seeing Daenerys die was, like, quite shocking. I was kind of like, right, so where are we going from here? Clearly Jon Snow has killed her. Clearly he can't hide that. And Drogon flies off, by the way, with Daenerys' body. I don't know, it doesn't explain, I'll get to what happens in a minute, but Daenerys dying, to me, halfway through the episode, it kind of caught me off guard. I kind of expected her to be the climax of the series, her death to kind of end the series and wrap it up in a bow. But doing it halfway up the episode, it was like when Avengers Endgame started and they killed Thanos off within 20-30 minutes. It was shocking, but as far as the episode went, I actually did enjoy what they did with it. So, but it was a bit risky to kill her off that early on. So we cut to black, and then we cut to like 3 months later, and Tyrion Lannister is in his cell, and Grey Worm gets him, and he looks like he's taking him to be executed. So Grey Worm walks with Tyrion to a summit of all the powers that are left in Westeros. There aren't that many left, to be honest. There's Samwell Tarly, there's Brienne of Tarth, there's Sansa and Arya Stark, there's Gendry Baratheon, there's Sir Davos, there's a couple of other families I don't really know. Wait a minute. I'm trying to remember the names of these families. Is it there's the Martells, I think. There's someone for the Martells. There's obviously someone for the Tarlys. And there's someone from Dawn, the guy with the hair, I think. But yes, there's all the powers that are left in Westeros. There isn't a lot left. And then the Grey Worm with Tyrion. And Sansa says, you were supposed to bring Jon as well. So Jon is, at this point, also a prisoner held by Grey Worm and his Unsullied and Dothraki army, because he's now the leader. He was made the general of the armies, and with Daenerys dead, Grey Worm's the leader. So they basically discuss what they're going to do, and Tyrion says, well, we need a king. And Grey Worm's like, you shouldn't be speaking, and because Grey Worm's getting a little bit too big for his boots at this point, and he's basically like, like Tyrion, you're not having Tyrion, like he's my prisoner, he's a criminal, and Tyrion's like, that isn't your choice to make. What happens with Jon Snow as well, and Samwell Tarly suggests that we have a vote, which everyone laughs at, which is funny because they said, which I found it really funny because the Game of Thrones is all about people taking power through monarchy and hierarchy, and it's nothing to do with people being on the throne because they're popular. That's not how the Game of Thrones has worked. So it was a nice little, what's the term? Like, I can't even remember what the term is. I don't know the term, but referencing the series outside of itself, almost breaking the fourth wall a little bit. And then Tyrion says, like, we need what unites everyone, and he says that we're not united by armies or battles, we're united by stories. And who has a better story than Bran the Broken? He fell out of a tower and survived. He went west of the wall, or north of the wall, maybe. And he became the Three-Eyed Raven. Like, he's the one who doesn't want it, which is why you know he's the best one for it. And Bran looks at him and says, why do you think I came here? And then everyone says I, basically, to Bran being the king. So Tyrion says I, Samwell Tarly says I, and then you go around, everyone says I, Brienne. Sansa doesn't. Sansa says that the North are going to be their own independent kingdom, as they have been for centuries, which is, like, Bran's like, sure, that's fine. And then Bran says, oh, and I do want you, Tyrion, to be my hand, because I don't want to be the king, so I need someone who knows what he's talking about. So Tyrion says, but I don't want to be it. And then Grey Worm goes, he should be punished. And then Bran says, what greater punishment for him than to be doing a job that he doesn't want to do for the rest of his life. Like, so really great, like, storytelling and, like, stuff that I didn't really see happening, but smart ways to conclude certain story arcs and to make characters feel like they're ended, or that their story arc has ended. So Bran becomes the king. Bran is the king. All hail King Bran the Broken. And then we move into like the first, like, council chamber. Oh, we also so Tyrion goes to see Jon Snow after the summit, and Tyrion says the conclusion was come to that you can't be in here. You can't be here, essentially. So you're being sent back to the Night's Watch, which was a nice, like, again, it's nice, like, characters coming full circle. A character arc works when you have a character that's completely different from the beginning, or they go straight back to the beginning. That's how you tell stories. And to say you're going to go back to the Night's Watch, which is fine because Tormund and Ghost are there and you can actually find him petting. And Jon's like, okay, that's absolutely fine. So then we have like the first council meeting of the new heads of the King's Landing. So you've got Tyrion as the Hand. You've got Sir Bronn as the Master of Coin or the Lord of Titles. You've got Sir Davos as the Master of Ships. You've got Archmaester Samwell Tarly. And then you've got Brienne of Tarth, who's the King's Guard, and she comes in with Bran, the King of Westeros. They have like a really good little banter session there's some really good banter here with Sir Bronn and Davos, and Bronn was really underutilized this season. The scenes he was in were like the best scenes of every episode, like, to be honest. And well, they were the best scenes in episode 2, definitely. But yeah, Sir Bronn was underutilized in this season, unfortunately. But here, as I said, he really got a chance to shine, and it is really nice to see Bronn and Tyrion back on the same page. Davos and Brienne and Samwell Tarly all discussing. Bronn talking about we need new brothels, and Sam's like, there's things that are more important than brothels, like ships. And Bronn's like, I don't know. It's a tough question. And then we move into like the final sort of shots of the episode, which are you've got parallel. The three main characters of the show are the Stark kids. So you've got Jon, Sansa, and Arya, and basically there's like it keeps switching between showing you what they're all doing. Arya, I did have to remember this as well. Before Jon goes to the wall, Blackgate, Castle Blackgate, it's bloody Lord of the Rings. Before he goes north the wall or to the north, he says goodbye to Sansa. He gives her a hug. He says goodbye to Arya. Arya starts crying. This bit was quite emotional. This bit actually kind of got me because it's a goodbye to these characters, and then he says goodbye to the king and Your Majesty. It was really cool, like, moment to see the kids that started it, Bran, Arya, Sansa, and Jon. They are the driving force of Game of Thrones. Like, the first series of Game of Thrones, to me, was always about Ned Stark's kids, and Ned Stark was the main character of the first season, really. And I know he dies, but like they built the first season up as Ned Stark's story, and if you hadn't read the books, you were shocked when Ned Stark died. So his kids almost like became the new main characters, especially Jon Snow, and Arya's had her own little story, and so has Sansa. They've all come such a long way in the 8 seasons of the show, so it was really nice to get a chance to say goodbye to these characters. Jon Snow heads off to the north to Castle Black. There he sees Tormund and Ghost, and he finally pets Ghost, and then they head north of the wall. You've got Sansa, who's made the queen in the north. She's given the crown, and then you've got Arya, who's heading west without Gendry, who was also at the summit earlier. I actually thought they would make him king. I honestly thought they would make him the king. By the way, Bronn did get Highgarden as well. Bronn was granted Highgarden, so his debt was paid. But no, you had Arya who's heading west to discover what is west of Westeros. And that is how the show ended. Beautiful music, really fantastic. The orchestra that do the music for Game of Thrones are incredible. And throughout this episode, there were so many moments of music that I think it was all stuff from the show that they'd used before, but they wanted to push it all into this final episode. They wanted to cram it all in, essentially, to say thank you and to give us everything we wanted in the final episode. And that was the way Game of Thrones ended. The Game of Thrones is over. The War for the Iron Throne is over, and in the end, Bran Stark won. And you know what? I remember seeing betting odds on Bran, and it was like 6-1 or something that he'd get it. So I should have put some moolah on that. That is Game of Thrones. As I said, it's emotional that it's over. I was quite emotional watching the family goodbye and Tyrion seeing the bodies of Cersei and Jaime. And I know a lot of people that think that this episode was quite anticlimactic. I thought it didn't over-deliver. It gave me pretty much what I wanted. There was a couple of little subverting my expectations moments. There was a massive death, obviously, the death of Daenerys Targaryen, and that was big deal. Said that subverted my expectations, killing her off halfway through the episode. And it was I think, a very, very good episode of the show. I've said I haven't said anything on my Facebook or yet, but I thought this was a very, very good way to end the show. As I said, I don't think it over-delivered. I'm not going to give this a 10 out of 10. I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10. I've seen a couple of people give it 7s and stuff. I did think this was very good. I think as far as emotion and packing in a load of stuff, the actual direction, the shot competition, the composition with Daenerys being the Satan figure was incredibly well timed. And I thought that everyone in this episode was great. Tyrion Lannister deserves BAFTAs for this. Yeah, that was the end of the Game of Thrones. Our watch has ended. It's so weird. It's so weird thinking that I can't look forward to Game of Thrones next week because, God, it's just weird. It's just weird. I just can't think like Money in the Bank. I haven't even thought about watching Money in the Bank yet, just because Game of Thrones has been on my mind ever since I watched it this morning. So, God, wow. Wow. I've really enjoyed reviewing Game of Thrones as well because it's one of those shows that is so deep and rich, and people have so many contrasting opinions on it that you're always going to piss somebody off, but you're always going to appease somebody else. It's really interesting, and obviously most of my friends and my family watch Game of Thrones, so it's going to be interesting speaking to them, and hopefully if any of them watch this video, they can see my views on the show. And what I thought of the conclusion of the show. I'm going to give the finale a 9 out of 10. The Iron Throne was a great way to end the show that subverted your expectations a little bit and gave you, some people probably what they expected with Bran as the king. You're told the best king is the one that doesn't want it. So that's the perfect way to end Game of Thrones, I think. And I guess that's it. That's it for Game of Thrones. Don't know what I'm going to review now. I'll review. I've still got to do something for my birthday. My birthday was 2 weeks ago. I've got so many birthday presents to show and pictures and that thing there and pop vinyl to show you. So I'm going to have to do that at some point. But I've got an assignment to complete. Thanks for watching, guys. This has been Royal Russell. Like, comment, subscribe for tell me your thoughts. What did you think to the finale of Game of Thrones? Did you think Daenerys' death was shocking, that it was that early on in the episode? What did you think to Bran as the king of Westeros? Did you think there'd be more casualties in this episode? What did you think to the series as a whole? The series as a whole, I'd probably have to give it a 7 out of 10 and say it's good. The whole series of Game of Thrones is a 9. It's one of the best TV shows of the past 20 years. It's just the intrigue. You can't beat, shows are trying to do what Game of Thrones does with its plot and its writing and the production value, but they just can't. It's just, at the end of the day, I have not seen a show. Sopranos, I think, is the best TV show I've ever seen, and Game of Thrones is probably in the top 10. It'd be tough to say top 5, but across 8 series, it's probably lower, near 10, because of the peaks and troughs. Whereas Sopranos is there's very few troughs in Sopranos. But I guess thanks for watching, guys. This has been Royal Russell. Please comment and subscribe for more. As I said, tell me your thoughts on Game of Thrones. I hope I haven't gone on too long. I've got to go and do the dishes now as well. So thanks for watching, guys. This has been Revolver Russell for the final time, signing off about Game of Thrones.